Good, so we're good to go. Walter, thanks very much for jumping on. I know we've gone back and forth a little bit trying to sort out a time, both very, very busy schedules at the moment. How are things your end? Are you all safe and well and busy?
Yeah, all is well on my end. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's been a couple of times to narrow down a time slot. It's been quite busy, at least here in the academy. We're full in swing. We have a couple of league matches with the older boys. So with that, I mean, being said, midweek matches to like weekend matches. So it's been super chaotic, but I mean, I'm enjoying it. So I'm blessed to be working in such a good setting and just being able to coach whereas a year ago that wasn't really the case because of COVID-19 kind of took a hit on a lot of our jobs. So I'm very fortunate and blessed to be able to be doing this, but all is well in here in Philadelphia.
Perfect. So obviously I've looked a little bit in terms of your background and stuff, and it's very extensive, and I'm sure we'll get into some of those experiences later on. But for people that maybe don't know you or don't know your background, you just want to talk through, I guess, some of the highlight roles you've had, and then where you are at the moment and what that looks like.
Yeah, so I guess a broad overview of myself, and we can dive into it, is I am a performance coach, strength coach. It's funny, over the years, I've kind of like told myself, what am I? Am I a performance coach, strength coach? I know it's all kind of the same, but at the end of the day, I'm someone who's just fascinated in human anatomy, human physiology, and human performance, but also someone who likes to educate, teach, and coach. So I guess short term, I'm a performance coach. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I'm new to here to the East Coast in the States. So Philadelphia just took a job here with the Philadelphia Union in their academy. So originally from Los Angeles, California, I did my undergraduate studies at Cal State Northridge, got my bachelor's in kinesiology at Northridge, and then a couple of internships from here and there, starting off from Exos all the way to working at the United States Olympic Training Center for Team USA, and then to baseball in another country, like a little bit all over the place. Got my master's from A.T. Still University in kinesiology with a dual emphasis in orthopedic rehab and sports conditioning. I have my certification, CSCS from the NSCA. USAW, sir. I'm a big Olympic weightlifting fan and person, so I have that certification. I do that a little bit on my own leisure, doing a couple of Olympic lifts. I'm very fascinated about that sport, but at the end of the day, football, soccer has always been my go-to sport, and I'm just happy to work in this setting.
Perfect. So obviously you alluded to there kind of working in the academy at Philadelphia Union and stuff. So what does that look like, I guess, age-wise, and what do you cover, I guess, from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis?
Yeah, so it's quite actually fascinating here because my previous job before the Union, I actually was the academy performance coach with the L.A Galaxy back out in Los Angeles. But very different setting in terms of here. I have quite a bit of more responsibilities, but all greater responsibilities. I want to say it's all new and a good learning experience because with the academy set up here, it's I want to say very special because we're fully integrated with, with the school set up right here, the charter school that the boys go to, and, the football setting, developing, the next generation of first team players for the first team or in MLS. So for the most part, I'm in charge of the U17s, the oldest boys in the academy, and I do work with all the other age groups, which is like the 15s, 14s, 13s, all the way down to the 12s. But in terms of like my major team, it is the U17s, where I handle like the data analytics side from, the sports science side, just a little bit more geared towards them. But again, that's not just always my responsibility. We have a nice little setup for the Union Academy. It's called school training. Essentially, think of it as it's physical education, PE. So Monday through Friday, the boys from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30, we're doing long-term athletic development skill sets, introducing, multi-sports, cooperative games, essentially PE, but also some days, integrating with the football side. So I'm a part of that. One day out of the week, we have something called Mind Gym, which is very interesting, where we develop more on the sports psychology of sports. So where we have like mental skill sets, exercises for the boys, how to cope with stress. So I'm a part of that, where I assist with, we have someone come in who's kind of like a sports psychologist, and assist with that. But then again, as the evening comes on, our younger boys come out, our 14s, 13s, and 12 essentially come in, do an activation for them. Also individual like physical development work with our top prospects in the weight room. So it's a little bit all over the place. I'm a very busy person, but I'm enjoying every single minute of it, because I found my calling, and that's working in long-term athletic development.
Perfect. So there's loads of really good stuff that I want to dig into there. So I guess the first thing, just to provide a bit of context for everyone. So you mentioned there kind of Philadelphia being a little bit unique in its setup, having a school and stuff. So it sounds like it's the under 12s up from what you said there.
Yeah.
So can you just talk through kind of what the academy actually looks like in terms of having that link to the school, and when the lads generically might train, or what that looks like, and why it is so unique?
Yeah, so I guess a good example would be, let's go with our under 15s, because I know our or even our older boys, the under 17s, but what a typical day-to-day would look like. I'll shoot it up with a Monday, because that's usually our busiest day. So it's our reentry day. Coming from the weekend, we play a game on a Saturday. So what a Monday would look like: we come in with we meet with the staff every morning before training, so that can be between the hours of 6:30 to 7 in the morning. We kind of go over the plan of the day, what we're going to do, speak with the sport coaches, and just to kind of go over what we're going to do in the weight room, because that's the first thing we do when the boys come in, is they do their strength and conditioning, the physical development before training. It's usually 30 minutes. Right now we are currently in block 2, which is more of our introduction of our power lifts or our speed lifts, which we have like trap bar cleans. It's just that part of the season. So we do a 30-minute lift with the boys, which also essentially is their activation or their warm-up to training. So that's usually between 8:15 to 8:45, and then the boys are out on the pitch. We do the field session, give or take. We were usually finished around 10 o'clock, but usually within that time, within the hours of 9 and 10, school training starts for our 15s, 14s, and 13s, while we do more of other physical development during that time. And usually, give or take, around 10:30 to 11, the boys now go to school. So they're literally, the facility is probably 500 feet down the block, or it's the same like vicinity. And then just the boys go to school, they get their studies done, and give or take probably around 2 to 3 o'clock ish, the boys would come back on the pitch. They do IDP, individual development work, with their coach. And usually, give or take about that, the 17s are done for the day. At this hour, that they go home, they rest up, prep for the next day. But our 15s, 14s, 13s, their evening session starts, because they don't train in the morning. That usually is between 3 to 6 o'clock. They come in, weight room, 30 minutes, and then they go out into the field. We pull apart some kids who are our top prospects, and we just do individual work for the physical development, whereas like teaching them biomechanics of how to run better, just individual prep work. But that is essentially a 12-hour day. So Monday is quite busy.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, the fact that obviously you can manage that schooling within that. So I guess my next question is recruitment of players. Do you stay locally to Philadelphia, or are you able to recruit externally and then kind of board those players as well? And do they go home, or do they go have a boarding house? How does that look?
Yeah, there is a boarding house. I believe there is two, where the boys stay. So because we do not only just recruit locally, we do nationwide searches. So we look for the best of the best, and it's without being biased, it's arguable that this academy, this club is easily top three of in the nation for within the academy youth development. So we're pumping out talent, and I believe we're the one club with the most minutes within the first team that, from the academy. These boys getting promoted, I believe we saw a chart the other day. Yeah. So the union is doing right by, promoting great homegrown talent. But yeah, there is two boarding houses that the boys stay. So a lot of them, yeah, they carpool from together. But yeah, as well as, yeah, local. So it's quite it's a nice experience.
And then in terms of the academy identity, I know we hear about it a lot in the UK in terms of philosophy or style of play, or the West Ham way, Southampton way, Tottenham way, etc. Do you guys have a set philosophy in which your teams try to play? And then off the back of that, is there physical characteristics you look for in players to feed into that?
For the most part, yeah, it's high pressure, very strong pressure, very strong in physical development. Because from when I first came in, it was quite noted that, at least with our under 23s, because we do kind of have, like, quote unquote, like an under 23s club, which is, they're classified as the Union 2. We have the average age is usually about 17, so it's quite young. And with that U23s club playing in, which now kind of debunked in a way, there's going to be a new reserve league that's going to come into play. They play against older kids, postgraduate, between 25 to even older. So there's this perceived notion that a lot of clubs don't like to play us because they're playing against 17-year-olds. But that's the whole point. So we're a feeder. We're trying to breed talent. We have young kids. So with that case, we have to build robust players. We have to build players that can handle the pressure. So that's why we take physical development very serious, so the boys can withstand the demand of the club's philosophy, which is very high pressure. It's attack. It's very exciting football. So with that being said, so when we are in the weight room, we have to develop those characters. Even when it comes to recruitment wise, we have a testing battery that, like, can we find, like, a player that with raw potential, and can we, like, mold that player from, at least on our end, that would complement the technical side.
So, are there any particular tests or parameters you look for externally when either you're doing trials or you're looking at players to potentially bring in, etc.? Is there any particular tests you put them through to see if they're going to fit the physical characteristics, and what are they? If you
do? Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, with these tests, it's nothing too fancy. It's not very, like, it's just plain and simple. We do our power test, which you can classify that as a jumping test, a counter movement jump with arms, without arms, which, like, hands on the hip, a squat jump. We do a broad jump. We do a 40-meter dash with which we do, like, a 10 gate, like, interval. So we look at their acceleration and then their top end speed when they hit the 40. For a fitness test, we do a 30-15, but we don't put our trialists on the fitness test. And that was a talk with our scouting director, because we don't want to give the perceived notion with our trialists, like, hey, look, we're going to put you through a 30-15 test, we're going to kill you. Like, no. So obviously, within that case, like, we don't do it. If the kid does make it into the academy, we do give them the 30-15 test. But for the most part, we have GPS units, like, on a Wednesday, when it's just our big open spaces day. We strap them onto a unit and see how much distance and what's their work rate cover. So that kind of, quote unquote, serves as their fitness test, because they're usually on trial for about a week for the prospects. We also do a push-up test, and we do an MDSA test, which is called Multi-Directional Speed and Agility, which we do a compass test where the boys, essentially, it's a change of direction. So they go 5 meters forward, then cut out 5 meters to the right, back into the middle around the cone. So essentially hitting every single point for time. And then with those tests, we then get like the standard deviation and the mean and find where they are in the team average, and then find and rank them for their score of athleticism. And from then on, and it's just, we now report to the scouts, our director of the academy, hey, this is where so-and-so ranks within, the U14s, but also within his age group, because we also bioband the boys. We take that into consideration where they are at in their adult stature and as they're growing.
And would those testings go all the way through? So would they go from like your youngest players and all the way through to your under 23s?
Yeah. So essentially, whenever we get a note like, oh, this is a top prospect, we put them through those battery of tests, usually on a Tuesday, and then follow up on a Wednesday. We split it within those 2 days, but we don't test out every prospect that comes in. Just if they were like the top 10 within the nation or the state, we give them those battery of tests, just because it's just that it's also time and resources, because it takes away from time for me when I would be with our U17s, because we usually test them early in the morning when their bodies are just as fresh, because it doesn't do much for us if we test them in the afternoon when they potentially, because they also go into school training. They're a part of that. So again, we're trying to keep them fresh. So early in the morning, usually 7:30, right, when we start testing them.
Perfect. And then when you're looking at your season breakdown, something you mentioned earlier on was kind of being in your power phase, etc. How do you break down your season in terms of looking to achieve athletic development, and what are those breakdowns? How long for, etc.?
Yeah, so this is actually, it's been quite interesting because of COVID had kind of like shut us down nationwide. So I know in my previous club that I was at, it was a complete shutdown. California, at least the Los Angeles area, was one of the few cities in the nation that was really tough to manage, being outdoors, who can participate outside. So when we were shut down as a club, it was from like April, and I recently just found out just from an old friend that they didn't get it started up until this January, whereas the Philadelphia Union, they were this side of the states was a little bit more managed. They started up in August, so they probably had a 3-month shutdown, versus some of the other states back in West Coast, it was almost a whole entire year, which was insane. But coming in when I got hired, because I started in December, this past December, met with my boss, Joe Trocchio, and who is our head of Academy of Performance. We sat down and we just planned everything out with macro templates. Like, we got the game schedule for spring, and we're like, okay, these are the certain games. This is what blocks we're going to hit. So we essentially planned ahead. Kind of took a guess, because I know every spring, or at least the end of the season, there's always a big tournament. We took a stab. I'm like, okay, this tournament may happen between the end of May, which is where we're supposed to peak, and we're supposed to be at our top physical performance, which we guessed right. We are going to be playing a big tournament in the end of May, which is the MLS Academy Cup at Atlanta, Georgia. So yeah, we did right. We guessed right. And again, that just came from planning. And so we do like a 4-week block. We're going to start off with, movement competency, which was our winter break, and then lead into like a small hypertrophy block. We finished off strength. Now we're in a speed and power block. So now we are fully in our MLS league next matches. So yeah, we plan months ahead, and then we obviously change left and right because some games get canceled, but it makes our job a lot easier just to plan ahead.
So from a practical standpoint, what changes if you've got a strength block to then a speed and power block? What exercise changes? What reps and set changes? Is there adaptations in terms of weight, duration, all that type of stuff? What changes from a practical delivery perspective?
So when we first started off, like in the movement competency block, which was our block 0, that was like, January when we were coming back from winter break. A lot of it was just easy exercises to master. It was mostly body weights, sometimes picking up weight, but just getting the movement down. So essentially, like the exercises that we're doing now in our, in our power block, they're just a progressed version of the first block. So of the movement competency block, which when we, for an example, we focused a lot on squatting. We taught the boys body weight. This is how you squat and pick up something, and to eventually lead to, let's say into our next block, which was a deadlift squat. And I want to clarify with that, because a lot of people think like, a deadlift is a hinge exercise. Yes, it is for us, but we just, as a club standpoint, when we teach deadlifts, they're more of a squatty deadlift, where the boys actually bend their knees, drop their hips down to pick something up. Whereas, maybe some other clubs teach it differently, whereas they have more hip hinge engagement, less knee bend. It's just a club philosophy on how we teach that exercise. So we taught them how to pick up something from a trap bar, like with weight, for a lot of reps. I believe we were at 10 to 12 reps, just to build them like a hypertrophy, strong muscles, to then 6 reps, but heavier weight. And now we're in this block with our power block, where we're doing called trap bar clean pulls, where we do 5 reps, but quality reps. We're supposed to pick that weight very fast and aggressive, tall, big shrug at the shoulders, and just essentially drop the weight, reassess yourself, lift it up as fast as you can. So they all look the same. It's just how we do them. That's how we kind of been progressing all the exercises.
And how does it change from when you're working from individual to individual? Because I'd imagine that, you're going to have some players that maybe come into your system at under 12s that are going to get exposure to this type of stuff, probably understand the fundamentals, are able to do the exercises. So potentially could lift heavier weights or do more reps quicker. Whereas you might have a new prospect come in who has never been in the gym before, has no idea how to safely deadlift anything or how to safely front squat anything. So how do you manage that in terms of giving each individual the requisite amount of challenge and obviously development mainly being your role?
Yeah, so and we do get that. We do have some kids who are their movement competency is really big, and then we do get sometimes prospects that come in where they've never touched a weight in their life, and they look almost essentially like a giraffe on skates. They look like Bambi. They're just moving like very awkwardly. So I think we're very fortunate that we have quite a big an academy performance staff. And I'll be quite honest, I think we're probably the biggest performance academy staff in MLS, where we have 2 athletic trainers, and we have 2 performance coaches, me and my boss, and we have an intern, strength and conditioning intern. So that alone, I know guarantee that that's a pretty big staff. Whereas like I know in other clubs, like it's only like a 1-to-1 ratio. There's only 1 performance coach, 1 athletic trainer for a full academy of 5 teams. So we're very fortunate to have a full staff where we can have definitely a lot of eyes on the athletes, where usually I like to take the kids that are, don't move well. My boss, Joe, likes to take the ones that, move well, and just, challenge them, like just to make them, everybody a little bit almost on the same level, where, one kid doesn't feel like overwhelmed, like, oh, Joe Schmo is doing more than me, so we can give them more weight. Still keep it the same exercises, but challenge them to the point where like, oh my God, like I'm breaking a sweat. I'm being challenged by, other means. But again, like it's usually just, we keep the movement the same, just add more weight to it. So that way he feels challenged. And then I get essentially the prospects or the kids who are struggling to move. That's kind of the way we combat it. But I also let my boys take ownership. So usually our team captains are with the prospects or with the ones that are struggling. It was very important that I kind of instilled that. So, take ownership for your own team and just build a good team culture. So I know some of our team captains are with the younger ones, and just to help them out, so that way they don't feel left behind. Like, oh, our team captain's helping me out. Cool. Like I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess leading on from that, how do you manage their peaks and troughs throughout a year? Because I imagine there, like you said, you wanted peak performance for this tournament and stuff. And looking back over your previous, working in Team USA, for example, there's going to be maybe a couple of peaks in a year that they're going to think, and everything else between that is developments. Whereas in a soccer context, you've got games pretty much every week or maybe 2 or 3 every weekend. So how do you manage the development, the athletic development side, and wanting them to be more powerful and more durable and more robust, along with the fact you don't want them having DOMs going into a game on Saturday? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so it's funny because when I was with Team USA, it was a lot easier to manage all that, because with Team USA, you're working more with individual athletes, and where their job is to be an athlete. They don't have to worry about school or a job. That is their job, is to be an athlete. So that scheduling is a lot easier versus here in the academy. They have school, they have games, individual development. So we do schedule 3 formal testing of the year. Like we do beginning of the year, which is in August. We do a mid one, which is in December, January, and we do a final one, which I believe it's in our schedule in our books mid-June. But we informally test them throughout. So whenever we have a jump mat where every now and then when we feel like the schedule is going to be a little bit lighter on a certain day, we'll just quickly have the boys jump on the mat just to kind of get an informal reading and take that into consideration, jot it down on the notes that, hey, so and so like hit a new peak, at least in terms of that. For our power development, maybe for our strength development, we do know when the boys add a little bit more weight. We have an app called Bridge Athletics, so we get to track the boys' weights. So if I see a kid doing a certain weight, I'm like, oh, that looks heavier than difore. I put it on the app and like did so and so, and that way it tracks it. So that's an informal way we do it. But in terms for the fitness side, fitness and speed side, that's what GPS comes into handy. So whenever is our big spaces day on a Wednesday, we can track the boys as like meters, their work rate, because we know that's the day they're going to be working the most, covering most ground, or even on game day. Like we just look at with our own analytics with Power BI, it gives us a little check mark where, hey, so and so did 110 of their max velocity. So now I know that's a new personal record for the boy for top speed. I make a note of that, and then I change their game thresholds as we go on. So yeah, it's a challenge. It's a puzzle to figure out, but it's within any other setting. I think that's one of the reasons why I like this setting in the football academy or in soccer. It's very chaotic, and I feel like I love to thrive under the chaos and solving those kind of puzzles.
And when you're looking at kind of improving their thresholds, I think that's a really interesting point. You said like they might have set a new PB or whatever during the game, etc. How often would you be looking for them to improve like their new PB? So say, for example, max velocity sprints in a game, which you're going to be able to get from GPSs, etc. How often would you be looking for those to improve in those areas? And how do you maintain those gains, I guess, throughout a season, but then also from year to year? Because I can imagine you could get to a point at the end of a season where their max velocity threshold is really, really high.
Yeah.
They go away and do very little, then that decreases a lot again. So how do you go about them maintaining those thresholds?
Yeah, so I will say, so with this new setting that I'm in, it's a new experience, because the challenge in the previous setting that I was at where we didn't have either the technology or the resources to do any of that. So it was almost, you're kind of guessing or going in blind to know a lot of these stuff. So coming here, it's kind of nice to have all the resources to do all that. So and again, but it's all strictly with the planning. So again, with me and my boss planning ahead, 5 months in advance, this is where we aim to have the boys peak in the weight room, and that should translate onto the pitch. And we're starting to see that. So with our last big game this past weekend. So now that we're kind of like in the mix of our league matches, I believe we're 3-4 weeks away from our big cup in Atlanta, and we're now on our strength and power block. We played a big game this past weekend against New York City, and the boys were top notch on their fitness. That's because we built them through our macro planning ahead. So that planning literally gives us what we need, at least in terms of what's going to come out on the GPS. So which is nice. Again, it's just all about the planning. So whatever we do in the weight room, it does translate onto the pitch, and it gives us what we want to see on the numbers. But also, just to make a little side note of that, even though that's great, that's what the technology is for. I don't want to always constantly chase that right number, because again, we work in a chaotic environment. So that's the point where my boss always tells me, and he reminds me, we're not going to be data driven. We're going to be data informed. All this stuff is just to inform us. Are we doing the right thing? We should never chase a certain number. That kind of makes sense. Like, ultimately, this stuff is just to inform us, not to drive us completely. Because then you lose the identity, you lose the culture.
I think as well, it's interesting if you're looking for a number of sprints. This is a really simplistic way. If you're looking for a number of sprints in a game, for example, it might just be that for that player that the ball hasn't come that side of the pitch. So actually they've done a lot less because the ball's been over the other side more, and you don't want them just running up and down the touchline to try and get their sprint totals up.
And there's always multiple factors, and it was quite funny because one of our previous games, actually the game I just mentioned against New York City, we covered the least amount of total distance, but we had the most amount of high speed runs and sprints. So, and I'm thinking and I'll be quite honest, with at least our older boys, we actually lost that game. Now, was it that, did we cover less distance because we were not technically savvy, or we didn't have a lot of sprints and high speed runs when we were chasing the ball because we didn't have a lot of possession, or it's just a lot of multiple factors. So a little cool thing that we're trying to do, at least me and our video analyst, is we have a video system called Speedio, and we're trying to integrate the Speedio with the catapult. So now we can kind of integrate 2 and 2. So on video, when we see a boy make a sprint, it would actually tell us how fast they're going and how many meters in that certain amount of time frame. What was their high speed run? So essentially it's tagging it using the GPS stuff. That's kind of the next big project me and our video analysts are trying to work with, which would be very helpful for us.
Yeah, and you've mentioned there a little bit around the work you do with area sizes, and it's something that we've discussed a lot on the podcast before. So how does the work you do in the gym translate to pitch or pitch side? Do you do a lot of stuff on pitch with the players, or is there certain, do you help with the planning process with the coaches? What does that look like, getting the transfer from what you're doing in a set environment in the gym to then obviously seeing it on the pitch?
Yeah. So I will say, again, it's funny. I'm always going to use my previous experience. So with the last organization I was with, maybe it was like a club philosophy, but I did not get a lot of a say or ownership on pitch sizes or even time and duration. So when I came to the Philadelphia Union, they told me, you are in charge of the time, the sets and reps, and then the pitch sizes, which that blew my mind, because I was like, wow, I have a big say on our training. So now, that going back into the way we start the day, that's the coaches meeting at 6:30 to 7 a.m. in the morning. That's where I give my recommendations. So this is how big the pitch, the drill should be for pitch size. This is the duration. So now I'm working on the physical loading. So I have complete ownership on that, which is amazing. So it really helps us out a lot. And again, what we do in the weight room, it translates over into the field. Like, whereas like we're teaching the boys how to sprint better, how to run better. We make it specific to the sport. We introduce the ball. But yeah, it's quite nice to have complete ownership on all these parameters.
And then in terms of over a week, for example, is there a threshold that you would try and hit in terms of the amount of loading the players go through? Because obviously, like you're saying there, you've got access to different pitch sizes, different durations and stuff. Would you say for a game on a Saturday, over the week, we're looking for them to complete this number of high velocity sprints or this distance? If they start getting above or below this, we need to adapt accordingly. Or Mondays is going to be our heavy loading day. Tuesday, we're going to wean off, or this will be small-sided, this will be slightly larger distances. How does that look over a week?
So I'll always give credit to this part with a previous mentor in my last club. His name is Will Sparks. So he kind of gave me the insight on how to like help a plan accordingly, how to build thresholds. Are we hitting the right markers throughout the weekend? Essentially, he showed me his philosophy, and then I kind of took it apart, made it my own. So what I do is I build threshold for the boys through Excel and through catapults. So I'm using our fall averages, which is like every game the boys did, average it out and give it a predictive 90 minutes. Why 90 minutes? Because that's for the 17s. They play 45-minute halves. Once I get these thresholds, because some kids may not actually play a full 90-minute match. So they may play sporadically 15 minutes, 35, 60 minutes. And so with those average, once I find that average, I give it a multiply by, let's say 90. And so I get like a predictive. So now I have something to work with. So with those averages, I get a team average. And now I know at least week to week, with the way I do my analytics with Power BI, it gives me a conditional formatting, like where so-and-so is within 100% of his game distance. So essentially we're trying to build up the body, prepare them for, match day. So coming in on a Wednesday when I know we're a little bit short on our high-speed runs, it gives me a red conditional formatting, maybe gold. Now I know I could probably do a little bit top offs with the boy at the end. I know they hate that because they say, oh my God, more running towards the end of practice. A lot of players don't do that. But again, that's when I come in to make recommendations on pitch sizes in the morning to essentially know at the end of the day, the boys are, topped off. We don't have to do any extra work at the end. And again, always referencing back my former mentor, Will, because he told me, try to get the boys at least 6 to 8 sprint exposures for, hamstring health within the month. So my analytics kind of gives me a little bit of a guidance check mark. Hey, so-and-so hit about 6 to 8 sprints throughout the month. So-and-so didn't. So now I know, I'm like, all right, I got to be cautious. I got to keep an eye on him, make sure he's getting his body prepared for the game. So that's the kind of, in a broad, like how I look at, like if the boys' bodies are ready for match day.
No, that makes complete sense. I like the idea of having, a spreadsheet that flags up other people that aren't close to what those thresholds, etc., should be. So moving forward, you mentioned obviously you do a little bit of work with the school in terms of like the PE type sessions with the boys, and then obviously also the mind gym, etc. Do you just want to talk through, I guess, the PE stuff initially, what you do from a foundational point of view to support them in their generic and holistic athletic development, and then moving on to the mind gym, kind of what that actually entails from a week-to-week basis?
Yeah, so with the whole the physical education component, it's usually 30 minutes of like more, I wouldn't want to say strongman stuff, but teaching the boys, exposing them to more movements with weight implements. Like whereas like we're teaching the boys how to carry. I know soccer players don't need to like carry heavy stuff, but we're trying to expose these boys to as much as we can, just to build an overall holistic and soccer machine. Just like, so we do carries with the boys. We have them do crawls. We're trying to expose them into different things. So that way, they can problem solve something within the pitch. If they fall down, how they're going to get up. Or so we do that for 30 minutes. We different exercises. We teach them we do kettlebell swings with the boys, teach them how to engage with their hips, how to be explosive. So it's just another form, because I know we have structured weights with them on Mondays and Wednesdays, but the whole PE school training is just a little bit more added stuff, just to kind of, again, promote movement competency. And usually that's 30 minutes. And then the last 30 minutes, we do cooperative play or multi-sports. So we do dodgeball, juke ball. We play enough American flag football, handball. Just give them other sports. Just so, again, they're moving in different planes of motion. They're enjoying other sports besides soccer. Because I'm a firm believer that, if one kid plays a single sport throughout their whole entire life, they are prone to being burnt out. So we introduce them to other sports, other skill sets. Obviously, we still want them to be soccer players at the end of the day, but just let them have fun. Because as a club, we do have these cooperative or multi-sport games as a match day -1 on a Friday. But just adding those, sprinkling them out on PE day on our school training, it's just more bang for our buck. And the boys, they love it. Give them dodgeball, they go bananas for it.
And I suppose what it does allow you to do by working in the school is, and this is a concern from the coaching side, I'd imagine, is you're not taken away from the coaching side when they're at the club. So you're not taken away from them doing pre-activation or doing gym sessions or actual pitch time, because you've got this other allotted bit of time where you can work on them more physically or multi-sports elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the nice part of it. And then I forgot to mention, and with Fridays when we have, we just supplement, we take out that the cooperative play, the multi-sport day, because we do that in their practice as our activation. And then we have that hour session as the mind gym, where we put the boys through mental skill exercises, to either problem solve, build team culture, which is just quite nice. Because I don't think, or at least from my experience, I haven't seen that in any other football academy club, at least here in the MLS. I know mental skills and exercise is very big in baseball, because I did forget to mention after the Team USA, I was a little bit all over the place. After Team USA, I worked with USA Rugby for a bit as a sports scientist, but I got the opportunity to work with in baseball with in the Dominican Republic for the Philadelphia Phillies. So I was in another country, working with, again, another academy setting, but mental skills is really big there. So it was almost, every day for 30 minutes, we would do team exercises, again, to build culture, to add problem solving skills. So really big in baseball. You'll always find that there. So it was quite nice to see that kind of translated over, and it's in the soccer and the football side here with the union.
Yeah, we'll definitely get onto that, because I think it's really interesting. Obviously, they play, I think it's like 182 games over a season within baseball. So how you prepare a body to do that, plus the playoffs and stuff, will be really interesting. But the mental side of it is massive.
Yeah, and it's really, I think it's really important for these boys, because again, they have school, they're in a professional academy setting where the expectation is high for them to to perform here, but also to have a social life out of here, because it's different. Because when the boys go to school here, they're taken out of that traditional school setting, or they're not in high school with other friends, or in a way also the opposite sex. So they're literally, they see the same kids every day. This is where they go to school. It's not, you don't get that traditional eat lunch with friends at the quad, or just explore other things that a normal high school kid would. So again, going through those routines daily, I would say it has to play some kind of mental toll. So just giving these boys exercises and how to combat those things, it helps out.
So what do you actually do then? So in those things, if we're looking at problem solving or team cohesion, what do those sessions, have you got an example for each? What do they actually entail? How do you help the guys with those?
So again, like a lot of times it's like solving a problem, or if it's a fun way. So I remember there was one, I can share with one experience that giving a secret handshake, and just like being put on the spot. So you obviously you partner up with a boy that you normally don't hang out with in the academy. You're partnering up with him. You're in charge of coming up with the secret handshake or a best friend handshake, and you have to present to the class, to your cohort, and just having them figure something out, like socializing and engaging, like, and just see them come up with the funniest stuff. That's it's just quite interesting. So I'll allude to just a little bit that, just because I know it's usually a touchier subject on some of the other mental skill sets like that we put for the boys. So that's just usually a fun exercise that they do.
Yeah, I think that what's pleasing is it is in being integrated more into academy sports to support the guys with that. As you said, modern world, it is probably more pressurized, and particularly being in this type of sporting environment, you are going to get that, which is slightly different. So in terms of, obviously, yeah, we'll move on to your previous experiences. Um, you moved from LA, where obviously you grew up and you worked there, etc. Did you see a cultural shift moving across the country in terms of the players and how they interact and what their motivations are and what their experiences are in a physical development perspective?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, I'll even say just for myself, because when I first started this journey, in performance, strengthening, and conditioning, I was in Los Angeles, and I literally thought, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not. This is home. I don't want to go anywhere. But a good coach that I worked under, his name is Jeff Krilling, and he's not from like Los Angeles. He's from Virginia, and he told me, like, if you really love this profession, and you want to make an impact on yourself and in the profession, you're gonna have to move. And I was like, no, I won't. But I did, and that was for my own development, and so I can experience what others have to give or what I can give to others. So being in Los Angeles, I uh, I had a job at my first job as a coach, paid job, and I was very proud of myself because I was like, oh, I made it. I don't gotta move. And it was actually at my alma mater where I graduated from Cal State Northridge. I became their assistant strength and conditioning coach. I was happy. I was like, I'm not gonna go anywhere. I'm gonna end my days here. But I failed. Like, and I'm not embarrassed to say that, or at least ashamed to say that, because I was a young coach, very arrogant, thought I knew everything, but no one ever told me how to talk to sport coaches, talk to administration. So I thought like I just could stay in my little weight room. But no, I failed at it, and that's when I made the decision. Like, I think I need to grow and learn more. So I took a leap from a paid job to go intern and work for free at arguably one of the biggest universities in the nation. That was at the University of Southern California. Took a leap. A lot of people thought I was crazy, but it paid off. So coming into a big university where expectations were high as an intern. So from there, 5 months, just a lot of sweat and tears working, again for free, but they took care of me. They fed me, they clothed me. And it paid off. I remember coming in one day, and then the head of performance told me, like, you're doing a phenomenal job, one of the best interns I've seen in years. I'll tell you what, give me a list of 5 places where you want to work at, where you want to intern next, and I will personally call them and like go up to bat for you. And that's what he did. And what was on top of my list was the Philadelphia Phillies and the Olympic Training Center for Team USA. And sure enough, I got an interview with the Phillies. They flew me out to their spring training facility. Didn't get the job, but learned how to communicate with the staff there, even after you didn't get a job, just to kind of build the relationship after, and which then led to a job in the future. but came back home, interviewed with Team USA over the phone, and got it. And now I had to make the decision to move to Colorado, so literally the mid part of the U.S., and packed up my things. Me and my girlfriend, who I'm still with right now, we packed up all our things, moved to Colorado, which it was a bit of a culture shock for me because I'm on my own. Just never been on my own. Like, I mean, even though I was with my girlfriend, but like just to be, you know, pay for your own rent, buy your own groceries, because, you know, I was still living at home with my parents. So that was complete shock for me. And also just being kind of almost up in the wilderness, because out where Team USA trains in Colorado, you're kind of up in the mountains. It's a whole nature versus, you know, in the city of Los Angeles. So, but also working with different breeds of athletes where they are the 1% of the nation. They're representing the best of the best to prepare for the Olympics.
So what sports were you working with? What individuals and stuff were you working with?
Yeah, I was working with swimming, wrestling, was working with triathlon, diving, gymnastics, with a lot of sports. As you know, as an intern assistant, I was getting paid. It was the contract, but I was given my own like teams, which I was working with shooting, which was a very interesting sport. A lot of people think they don't need like strength and conditioning, but you'll be surprised like how much they do. Them, and I was working with Paralympic triathlon. So I worked with also a lot of Paralympic athletes, which working with that population of athletes made me a better coach, because if you coaching someone who is visually impaired is you take away your, you know, one of your abilities to coach, to visually show somebody how to do something. So now you have to rely on your verbal, how good you have to communicate with them, verbally, because again, you don't always want to touch an athlete. Some athletes don't want to be touched, so you can't put them in certain positions. So you have to be on point how you talk to them. So again, a lot of times within that setting, I did not have to motivate the athletes. They were already self-motivated, because that is their job, is to be an athlete for Team USA. And also, if they don't perform, they're out. That's their job. They are no longer part of Team USA. So yeah, for me, again, it was a different experience. And then, you know, going back home to California, working with rugby, which was an experience that first opened me up to, you know, data analytics and sports science, to then working in the Dominican Republic, you know, speaking Spanish, because I do speak Spanish, coaching in Spanish, but working with an age group of athletes where baseball is their way of life. Like, they have to make it in baseball to provide for their family. They have nothing else. So that was also another culture shock, being in another country, being far away from home, eating the food that was provided there, to like not going out late to a certain time because, you know, you don't want to get mugged, you want to be safe. So again, completely different, all great experiences that made me the coach I am today.
So going on to the USA stuff, what type of learning experience was that for you? Because you've named some sports there that are very, very different. You know, you look at swimmers and their body type with long levers and all that type of stuff, compared to your wrestlers who are going to be slightly more compact, and then obviously going to need a different type of power and stuff. But I imagine for you as an intern going into that role, it probably really opened your eyes to the variation of athletes, but then obviously the variation of their needs and how you need to support that accordingly.
Yeah, so I mean, it was definitely because it was different. Like, obviously you train someone like a swimmer is different from, you know, the like a boxer is all completely different, which was all great experiences. Got me to expose to different ideas and how to train them in the weight room. But I wouldn't want to say it was easy, because it's definitely something that you could always, you know, do your needs analysis, do your research. So and so, this is, you know, the certain energy system that they're in when they're in their certain sport. This is what they need to get stronger. But again, I'll always refer to like the culture, because the culture is always going to be different from, you know, a gymnastic athlete to, you know, a boxer, to again someone in modern pentathlon. I will say that our boxers, did not like to touch weights a lot. They, and it was just, again, to tell them, like, look, this is part of your development. I remember giving a boxer a Romanian deadlift, grabbing the barbell. They did not want to do that because they thought that would damage their hands. And it was a lot of times just building a relationship with them. And that's what made me a better coach, because every athlete was different because their culture was different. So if I can build buy-in with multiple sports just to get them to, become better in the weight room to then translate to their sport, that was more of the challenge. And again, working with Paralympic athletes, where, communicating with them was a lot different. Again, you're working with visually impaired athletes who are amputees. Like, how do you work with them to maximize, their performance? Because a lot of them, I was quite shocked that some, again, always like our visually impaired athletes, we would program clean pulls, like Olympic lift derivatives, and they were able to do a hang clean, front elbows, and squat. And sometimes you'd be like, are you visually impaired? And I'm like, yeah, I can't see, but they're amazing. And just, again, I'm a better coach today because I got to work with those kind of athletes.
Is there any one particular experience or interaction with an athlete during that time that either really challenged you or really improved you as a coach?
Yeah, and I think that was my first experience, because I want to say I almost had it easy with every athlete that I had been working with. Nobody ever gave me problems where, let's say, nobody was ever a diva who thought they were like all in and such. I mean, I won't mention names, but I finally got to work with an athlete where it's like, where she came in with her team. You lift as a team, but it was very important that, from a cultural standpoint, that even though you guys are in a team, but you do, your own individual events, nobody gets special care. Nobody truly gets the special care. But this certain athlete wanted all special care. But it's kind of hard. Like, I'm trying to work with, everybody's on individual programs, but like, you make it seem like I'm going to be your only strength coach. No, I also have to work with your teammates. So that was my first experience working with a difficult athlete and testing my patience, because I am a patient person, but it was quite a challenge to work with someone who wanted all the attention. So I would say, was it a win? Yes, it was. I learned to pick my battles. I guess that was a learning experience, when to pick your battles, when to say yes, when to say no to please an athlete. But I think that was the biggest challenge I've had up to date. So it definitely prepared me for, like, whatever setting I'm at now, like, like when to deal with that kind of athlete.
And I'd imagine in that context, it can be challenging because they or she may want I'm trying to phrase this in a delicate way. They may want the attention because they're driven to win. If you're at Team USA, you probably want to be the best, not only in the US, but also in the world. So actually, they're probably trying to get that attention, that support, because they want to win. So you don't want to stop them having that drive or the support. But equally, you need to realize, actually, for you to win, the rest of your team needs to win as well. Or you want to win, but so do these 17 other people that I've got to work with. So I guess for you as a practitioner, it's trying to find that balance between assisting an athlete in their goal, but assisting all the athletes with their goal and not just focusing on that one.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because at the end of the day, I'm not saying that we were understaffed there. It's just, obviously you can't hire like X amount of performance coaches because there's always a budget for a certain staff. But like, so yeah, like it was definitely, that was the challenge, because she was a winner. She won a medal in the Rio Olympic Games. So I mean, so I guess, yeah, she was entitled that. Like, I got goals to hit. I got silver in Rio. I need to get gold in Tokyo. So totally understood that. But yeah, it's just finding that equal balance to like when to give. And so I remember diving into books, and the big book was Conscious Coaching from Brett Bartholomew, just to help me deal with those certain kind of athletes, like certain strategies, like, in a way, have times, pick your battle, give them their cookie when they need to, but also, show that you got to stand your ground.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. So moving forward to the baseball side, I think one of the things that interests me kind of from the outside looking in, and again, I could be wrong on this, but it's probably the different types of players you have within that 11. So you look at, for example, your pitchers who, might not be expected to bat at all. Obviously, they're working on arm strength and being able to throw fast for long periods, etc. But obviously, then you've got your closers that maybe don't have that skill set, a bit different. But then you could go to someone who's, your outfielders have to cover big areas of ground very quickly to either steal bases or make catches around the wall and stuff. So how do you go about, one, identifying what those player needs are, and then I guess two, sculpting programs within the team thing to help the players improve? And like you said there, if particularly in the environment you were in, that's the way they're going to pay for food or support their family and stuff. So you're going to get a little bit of that, not divish, but a little bit of that drive to say, no, I need your help now because this is how I'm going to get my family out. And you want to support them, but you want to support everyone else. It's a melting pot, I'd imagine.
Yeah, so I want to say that is one of the biggest challenges in baseball, as at least for a performance coach. Like, you working with the bullpen that's, either rotating, whereas, you have a starter and then a closer. I will say that was my challenge in the college setting, because in the college setting, that was one of the teams I had was baseball, soccer, and golf. All the other, soccer and golf were easy to work with. Baseball was a challenge, especially because we never had a consistent bullpen. So that was a nightmare to program. And I thought, and I will be honest, that I was quite intimidated going back into baseball. Like, how do I work with that? But I guess in a way, I somewhat had it easy in the academy. I mean, well, nothing's really truly easy, but working with, academy players in the Dominican Republic, where we never really had, we did have starters, but everybody almost played an equal amount of innings because it's a farming system. We're trying to develop players where, a starter would pitch for maybe 3 innings and then the next person comes in for 3 innings. And when you're in the academy in the Dominican Republic, the games are long. And when I mean long, if you think baseball is long, 2 hours to 3 hours, it's like a 4 hours game in the DR because, the skill set is raw. So there's a lot of technical errors that go on. So it was definitely, a challenge. But again, I treated the boys as, a developmental player, where like we're going to focus on the fundamental movements. Because again, a lot of these boys never touched the weight room in their life. And it's also a cultural thing that in Latin America, a lot of players don't lift the weights. So my job was just to get them to perform the best movements, increase their movement competency. So that way, when they get out of the Dominican Republic and go to rookie ball in the States, they don't have to play catch up with what's going on in the States. So essentially I was bridging the gap because they sent me down there because it was almost like the Wild Wild West down there. Like, they don't know what was going on, like, because they didn't have anybody like, with the certifications or the degree in the background to work with athletes down there. So they sent me down there to bridge the gap. But that's the way I treated everybody, from like, the catcher to an outfield player to, a pitcher. It's just building a strong movement competency, a strong library. So that way, again, when they get to the States, they're squared away. They don't have to play catch up. And that way it doesn't hinder their chances. Like, oh, they're not developed. They don't know anything yet. Let's send them back to the Dominican Republic, which was hard for some boys. That's what happened. And it was just, it hit them pretty hard because then they saw it as I failed, not only myself, but my family.
And do you think there's any particular reason why they're not so keen on lifting weights? Is there any background to that?
I was always fascinated about that, but they don't want to be tired. Because I remember having a conversation with some of the boys where they think that, like, especially for a pitcher, they think that's going to hurt them. it's going to be detrimental to their pitching performance. Some of them don't want to be tired because, again, baseball is long. Long games, practices are long, so they think that's just something that's going to tire them. But no, it's not. And that's one thing, me, building a relationship with them in the weight room, outside of the weight room, that I'm not here to make you tired. I'm not here to give you the extra work that you think it is bad. I'm giving you stuff that's going to make you a better athlete, a better ball player, to provide for your family, to have a long, healthy career. So again, it's just building those relationships. Because again, a lot of them, they thought like, this is just going to get me tired. It's not going to be. It's going to be detrimental to throwing for me.
And in terms of obviously time on feet, it's going to be quite high, as you said there. It takes 4 hours going on and off and all that type of stuff. But in terms of like distances covered, etc., is that one of your main concerns for those guys, and what distance they're covering night after night after night after night? Or is it like muscular fatigue and how you manage that? Or is it dependent on position, depends on which one of those is a bit graver concern for you?
Yeah, it's more muscular fatigue. The boys go through repetitive motions like through the daily, from Monday through Saturday, because that's how long the training schedule was. We literally played a game every day, Monday through Saturday. And Sunday was like our off day. So a lot of it was just fatigue, because doing the same repetitive motions. And it's quite hard to manage. Well, one because you don't have the resources. You are, even though we did have great resources, but again, like some of the resources to get down there in the Dominican Republic was just a lot hard. Like, so we did what we could, but a lot of times it's just having conversations with the boy on how to recover for the next day. And it was quite challenging because these boys lived on campus in the academy. They lived in dorm rooms. So like each dorm room housed like about almost 10 to 12 kids. So you can only imagine like the sleep quality that they would get when it's like, we got to wake up 5 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning, because the boys have weights at 6 a.m. on the dot. So some of them would get 5 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep, and not by choice, just because, maybe one kid is just wants to stay up and, either play Fortnite or video games and just to the crack of dawn, and they want to be teenagers, and I get it, and I give it to them, but like, it's just, again, giving them the right tool set, the right strategy, and how to recover, how to sleep, and just find ways to just deal with what they have to do throughout the day. And that, I would say, that's the biggest challenge. My favorite thing that we did as a staff is we cut the Wi-Fi in the academy past 10 o'clock. So that way they would not play video games online. So that, I thought that was quite funny to do that to them. But of course, some of them found a way where it's using their own cellular data to like use a hotspot. But I thought that was kind of neat. We did.
Trying to get them to sleep. And then in terms of preparing them for that. So if you look at, for example, a pitcher, right-handed pitcher, for example, they're going to be, lifting the left leg to drive off the back leg to scoot forward to then rotate the body. That's a lot of wear and tear on very similar body parts. So if you look at like soccer, for example, although you're going to have a lot of fatigue on your dominant ball striking leg, you have points where you're going to be jumping, running different directions. So it's probably slightly more well-rounded on that front, where for a pitcher, you're going to be stressing and fatiguing the same body parts over and over again, and possibly disproportionate to one another. So I can imagine like one of your arms, your pitching arm, is probably going to look like Popeye, and then the other one was going to look like an old lady because you're not using it. How do you go around preparing the players appropriately for that game, and for that particular fatigue or that particular?
Yeah. Well, again, just like teaching them to recover after training, whether it's using modalities like ice or like ice bath, whatever makes them feel better, I'm all for it. I know everybody has like their own like say on it. Just make them feel better. But like a lot of that stuff, we address it in the weight room. Still doing a lot of bilateral exercises. Imbalances are always going to happen in any athlete, and it's I will say, as a young practitioner, I always thought like, oh, we got to find ways to mitigate that, to stop that, equal everything out. But it's just like a rabbit hole that you'll always keep chasing, and you're never gonna fulfill. So again, just being in the weight room, because I know I'm a big believer that, of cross education, do something bilateral, or maybe even on one side, it's going to have some kind of effect on the other side to balance it out. But it's a challenge, but like, it's just something we have to face. So we just have to make sure that like we're doing the right steps to make them recover.
And in terms of comparable athletes, when you look at baseball players compared to like soccer players, do you see massive differences between the two, or do you see any particular similarities between the two groups?
Well, yeah, for the most part, soccer is all running, and baseball players hate to run. So, it is an explosive and powerful sport. I will say that because it's a sport where maybe you can get away with the kid being, a little bit more meat on the bones, and obviously we want to have healthy athletes, but I remember in the Dominican Republic that these kids hated to run, especially if they're an athlete coming back from an injury, doing their rehab exercises, where we're trying to introduce them back into some form of having them some form of an aerobic foundation. But again, these kids hate to run, and plus a lot of kids don't want to run. It's like 100 degrees, humidity at 90%. Like, nobody wants to run in that kind of weather. That's usually the big difference versus soccer players is, at least with my boys right now, they actually like to lift weights, and they like to run. Sometimes I would argue that sometimes they don't like to sprint, but like that is their nature of the sport, like where they have to do sprints, make intelligent runs. So if anything, it's just teaching them how to be conservative, like use your energy the right way, if that kind of makes sense. So that's usually the difference I see within those two sports that I've worked with.
Perfect. Listen, I know we're closely approaching the time we allotted, so I'm going to ask you one last question, which with your experiences could be quite challenging. But who's the best practitioner or coach or player that you've worked with or against, and why?
That's really hard to say. If I'm going to cheat, which I will say one practitioner and one athlete that's made me the coach I am today. And I will say at first athlete that I got to work with was at Team USA. He is a cyclist, a paracyclist. His name is Ryan Boyle. I would actually call him Coach Boyle because he made me a better coach. Great human being, really compassionate, passion for his sport. Just overall, just great person, just who taught me, again, how to work with Paralympic athletes, but just fall in love with coaching. Because I know, like, as a young coach, you're kind of ambitious and like, oh my God, I want to work with the best. I want to work with this sport. But like, the reason why you're in this profession is that you like to help other people. And that's somebody who kept me grounded as a person. And I still call him and text him every now and then. This guy is world class. I believe within his category, he's the number one in the world in cycling, in paracycling. You might have to fact check me on that, but like, yeah, Ryan Boyle made me a better coach. Now, in terms of as a mentor, that's a tough one because I've worked under so many people. And I don't want to get grilled of like, oh, why didn't you mention me and so, but I'm gonna have to say Johnny Alcaraz, who is the second team strength coach for the L.A Galaxy, which the club that I was worked with before. He literally he was like my mentor on how to be a performance coach within the football setting. So compassionate person, literally taught me the ins and out, because it is a different beast when you're working in soccer, because you almost have to be a blend where, like, performance coach / sports scientist / actual soccer coach. So he was just kind of like, whenever I second guessed myself in this game or in this profession, I would shoot him a text, give him a call, and he would always answer without a doubt. So I really do owe it to him, to being like a great mentor and an overall great friend.
Perfect. Listen, what were some great conversation points there, and loads of stuff to take away and consider, and some really good insight into your current workings and stuff. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Michael, for having me.